Land 6 is a print and play game, a free print and play game that you may haven't heard of. I also learned about this game completely by chance. I was looking at the awards on Board Game Geek, best game in this category, best game in that category, and I was looking at the print and play category, and I don't know how I started to follow Link design, what else the designer has done, and then I don't remember how, but from link to link, analogy to analogy, I landed on this game called Land 6, which seemed attractive to me, both because it kind of looked good and interesting. It looked like a lighter version of Settlers of Catan, the card game, which it isn't at all, but it looked like it. I was, oh, it looks attractive. I also noticed that it was a solitaire game that you play by yourself, and I like to have solitaires around for when no one else is around. My solitaire games are there helping me to feed my addiction to gaming. Another thing is that clearly looked very light to make. In reality, this game only has 6 tiles, so you can print them and assemble them easily. And then you add a couple of other components that as a gamer you probably have around your house, and that is, the game is ready to go. I really like games that are print and play and easy to build. It was late at night and I simply made my own copy of the game in 10 minutes. The rules are not long and I was ready to go. What is Land 6? Solitaire game, which is, you know how Tiny Epic Kingdoms is sort of like a mini civilization game? Probably this could have been called Microscopic Epic Kingdom. If Tiny Epic Kingdom is tiny, this is even more minimalistic, even more minimal. It's a micro civilization game with a war game aspect. You represent this lord and this fantasy, generic, medieval setting, and you're trying to expand your kingdom and to take control of the capital of your opponent without losing control of all of your cities. Let me show you how the game looks and works. This is a print and play game, which is definitely very easy to print. All you need to print is 6 tiles. You can print the original design. I saw on Board Game Geek there have been several other redesigns that improve on the graphics. The night that I decided to try this game, actually it turned out that my printer was out of ink, so I simply made my own tiles using my advanced artistic skills, which also tells you not only what a good artist I am, but also how light this game is to make. You can easily make your own copy, even if you're just drawing it. The 6 tiles each has a number from 1 to 6 in the middle. Each tile is divided in 4 areas, representing forests, cities, sea, and fields. These fields are nutritious purple vegetables of sorts. And different tiles will have these 4 symbols in different combinations, as you can see. At the beginning of the game, you take the tile with the number 1 and the tile with the number 6, and you place them opposite to one another, making sure that the city on the 1 is in the top right corner and the city on the 6 is in the bottom left. They have to be as far as possible. Then you take the other 4 tiles, so you shuffle them and you place them on the board in a random order. You can also experiment with different orientations. This is great because you will have different boards from game to game. You have a modular board. There you go. Here the tiles are not perfectly square, so they look a little weird, but you can still see that areas are adjacent to one another, and adjacent in this game is only orthogonally, never diagonally. Nothing happens diagonally in this game. You start the game by placing a die with the number 6 on this city here. Your forces, your armies, your production resources are all represented by dice, and the number that the dice show matters. So you need a couple of dice. You also will need a die of a different color to control the actions of your enemy, and then you will need 6 something. The rulebook suggests to use 6 cubes. Here I'm using 5 disco meeples and an evil wizard meeple. So I'm seeing my enemy as an army of disco meeples ruled by the evil wizard. In reality, you only need 5 because as the game progresses, you will deploy the forces of your enemy, the AI of the game, on the board. And if there ever are 6 of them on the board, then you lose the game. So actually, the 6th one you never really use. He stays here and schemes evil things against me. So you are the Lord of the Dice, and you're fighting against the Lord of the Cubes or the Lord of the Meeples, whatever Lord enemy you want to make. The rulebook is only 3 pages long, it's very short therefore, but the rulebook insists on calling you the Lord of the Dice and the AI the Lord of the Cubes. Sometimes that is a little confusing. I think it would be easier if the rulebook just called you and the Lord of the Cubes, the enemy, the AI, but whatever. Each turn starts with you taking an action, and then the AI, your enemy, takes another action. Your goal in the game is to place a cube on this city here, the city of the enemy. The cube needs to show at least a 3, and there must not be any enemy units on that tile. If you achieve that, if you meet those 2 conditions, 3 and no enemy meeples here, then you win the game. You lose the game if you have no cities, if you control no cities on the board. You may have dice in other places, but no cities, no win. Actually, you lose the game. Also, you lose the game if the opponent has deployed all of their 6 units on the board. Now, when it is your turn, you take an action, then the opponent, the AI, takes an action. There are several actions that you can take. You can deploy an army. To deploy an army, you simply deplete 1 cube that you have in one of your cities by 1 point, and you then add another die on the board adjacent to one of your cities, and the number that die shows is 6 minus the number of enemy armies on the board. In this case, hooray, I could add a 6, and suppose I place it there. You can move, as one of your actions, you can move a cube. Then you deplete a cube in a city, and then you simply move one of your cubes orthogonally by 1 space. And the rules say that if you have dice deployed in 2 or more cities, then also the moving cube will need to spend a point, will need to spend a pip. If you have cubes in the fields, you can use them to feed your armies. Then when you do that, you spend a point on a cube, or just say on a die, on a field, and then you increase the value on all of your other dice that are not in fields. So, hooray, now my army is well fed. They feel better already. The other action that you can take is to fight against the opponent. Yes, there will be meeples of the enemy on the board throughout the game. Then you choose a die which is in a forest. You subtract a point from one of your dice that are in forest, and you roll a die, and then you simply look at the result. 1 is very bad. Here's the combat table. With 1, well, with 3 or 2, nothing happens. You simply fail the attack. You wasted a point in resources, and that's it. You failed the attack. I assume that having forces in the forest means that you're producing weapons, arrows, siege engines, that kind of stuff. 3 to 2, you simply wasted your resources and your action. Nothing happens. 1, you do not succeed, and you subtract an additional point to a die placed on a forest square. 4, you choose an army of your opponent deployed on the board and remove it. 5 or 6, you also remove an army of the opponent and you are on the board, and you can also take an extra action. There is another action, non-action that you can take, which you take when you have cubes on the sea. At any time, you can spend a pip on a die on a sea square, and that allows you to re-roll a die. It may be a combat die, if you were resolving combat. It may be a die on the board because you're hoping to get a better result. For example, your cities may be pretty depleted down there. Then I decide to spend a die here, and after I spend a point there, I roll a die, and whatever result I get is then the final new result. I cannot reroll multiple times. Hooray! I just use resources again. Not so great. But I could have gotten 6. Hooray! Or maybe 1. Who knows? I think it's gonna be so easy. Just keep rerolling those to get, when you get down to 1, reroll 1. Yes, that's a technique, but that by itself is not enough to win, because the opponents will keep pressuring you. So if you just find yourself stuck doing the same thing, at the end the opponents will win. So you take one of the actions that I described. You deploy new armies, or you move, or you feed your armies, or you attack, and then you have the extra action of rerolling. Once you took one of your 4 actions, the opponent gets to go, and you roll a die for your opponent. If the number that you rolled indicates a tile that doesn't have an enemy meeple yet, you add a meeple there. Suppose I rolled a 6. There you go. If you roll the number of a tile that has a meeple on it and armies of yours there, then all of the armies in the tile that was activated will lose a point. In this case, it was a point there. So if your roll indicates a number where there is a meeple and your armies, all the armies in that tile lose a point. Suppose, however, then you roll a number in a tile where there is an enemy meeple, but there aren't any dice of yours, then one of your armies in a city loses a point. In this case, this would be particularly tragic because the only city that I have is this one. I would need to lose a point from here. Losing a point for here means I have 0, means I remove the die. That means I've lost the game because I haven't control of any city. So you continue like this until either the AI deploys all of their meeples or makes you lose control of all of your cities, or until you manage to achieve victory by placing a cube with a 3 in the enemy capital without any enemy meeples around threatening you. Now, sometimes you buy these big games with long rules and they are epic, and sometimes they are too big for their own good. Sometimes they feel fiddly, and then sometimes you find something this simple, this minimalistic. This is like 4 sheets of paper for the rules, and 2 of them, one of them is like instructions, and one of them is a small paragraph about endgame conditions and variants. It's 2 pages of rules, 6 tiles. You just need to add a couple of other components such as dice and cubes, and you're good to go. It costs nothing. It takes little time to play, but boy, it definitely gives you a good bang for your buck, considering you spend no buck virtually. It is much more than you get considering what you pay for. An example that you don't always get what you pay for. Sometimes you get much more. Is this game the greatest Civilization game ever? Certainly not, but it may just be the best that I have that I never paid for. It's a free game, and it is definitely worth the time to learn the game, to assemble your copy, which is so simple to assemble, and to play. This is a good game. This is a good, small, micro-civilization game where you need to maximize your resources. You need to find good timing and good chain of resources of how to use your effects, how to use your actions, which really feel scarce when you compare them to the pressure that is created by the actions of your opponent, the constant depletion of your resources. If your opponent is not depleting your resources, your opponent is placing meeples on the board. So yeah, hooray, I haven't lost any resource right now, but I'm getting closer to lose the game if there are meeples everywhere. Also, when a lot of the meeples, cubes, whatever you want to call them, units of the opponent are on the board, then the new units that you deploy are very weak. Is it a thematic game? No, not really. I've seen games that are less thematic than this one. I see my dice on the board not necessarily as the armies that are fighting, but as the people that are providing resources for armies that may not be on the board. So you deplete a forest in one area of the board, a unit on the forest, and then you inflict a loss on somebody else. I just see this as you produce the resources for those who will fight. The same for when you deplete a cube, a die in an area, and then you move somebody else in another area. You're sending the supplies and so on and so forth. The same happens with the cubes on the water. Then you're just moving goods around to allow you to perform actions. I mean, 1944 Race to the Rhine, which came out late last year, played a couple of years ago, a couple of months ago, and I didn't like it very much because that one felt just about moving supplies. It was just a delivery game with a thinly disguised idea of a war situation. It never felt that I was really playing a war game. It just felt like I was playing Lunar Rails or Empire Builder, in which you were delivering goods, and there was an abstract way in which these goods were being used to resolve combat. I think that this has a much better balance between the feeling of building your civilization, providing your resources to units that will perform certain actions, and even if you don't see the actual units, you do it the sense that the actions are resolved. There is a combat system, super simple but super effective. As a micro-civilization game, I got to tell you, this game is quite an achievement for what it is, for 6 tiles, a couple of dice. But it worked. It provided me with quite a challenge. I always felt that I was 1 or 2 dice short. I virtually always got to a point where I felt that I made a mistake. And if you make a mistake, you just waste an action or 2, then the opponent keeps bashing you, and you find yourself stuck in a cycle in which you never quite can catch up. I just felt that it was a time where I was falling on the wrong side of the curve, and then it was just a desperate situation to delay my absolutely certain demise in the game. And if you figure out an algorithm, if you figure out the perfect way to go to decapitate the opponent to win the game, then there are ways of increasing the difficulty. You can change the board and figure out ways to make the board more challenging. I like this. For what you paid for, this is actually a really good game. I enjoyed it. It's so portable. You can bring it with you. Can be your hotel room game. Can bring it when you're traveling. Can easily bring it to game nights. Everybody else is still playing a game. You're waiting for your turn to play the next game. You're right late at game nights. Happens to me all the time, so I have to wait until the other people are done with the game that they're playing. Then this can work as a perfectly nice filler, which is nice to play. You play by yourself, but it provides you with a challenge, which is challenging indeed to master, and challenging in the sense that it provides you with a challenge. It's exciting. You don't just feel that it's hard, but it's hard and interesting. Combining actions, figuring out ways of finding a right balance between moving forward towards your objective and not to deplete your resources to the point that you fall behind the curve. That is an interesting challenge. That is something you're trying to achieve, and it's not that easy. You do need some luck. I do think that you do need some luck if you keep rolling poorly on your combat rolls or your re-rolls. Then there isn't really much that you can do, but it's not like you spend $100 and now you are with the game like, darn, I spent 12 hours playing this game and now when it came down to a single roll and da-da-da. You played in 5-10 minutes, probably much less the first couple of games because you lose the game in 2 minutes. You play quickly, you didn't spend any money, you didn't spend much time. If you don't like it in general, it's not like you need a lot of money back. If you didn't like a single game, you can set it up again. If something didn't work with your luck, again, set it up again and try. You didn't waste much time. But there will be many games that are actually pretty exciting, pretty interesting. They feel tense and they have a narrative development. And again, very important, an interesting challenge. Land 6, I didn't know a thing about this game. I decided to give it a try randomly, and I'm very happy that it did. And this video may not be a video that will help you decide if you need to spend your hard-earned money on this design or not, but it is a video in which I hope that I brought to your attention a game that most likely you haven't heard of, and maybe you should have, but I think this is a game that is worth notice, and definitely it is worth building and playing. I definitely had a good time playing this game, and I hope that you will have a good time too if you decide to give it a try.